All right, welcome back to HQ Spotlight. It's a Wednesday, college football picks with AP top 25 teams. So we got the guys from the Cover 3 podcast, Chip Patterson and Danny Kanell. I'm Tommy Tran. Chip, are you ready for a better week than we had last week? Week 1 was fantastic. Last week we only had that Michigan-Oklahoma game, and we're back to having more juicier matchups. You hyped?
Oh, Tommy, we are so hyped. We've got conference games. We've got gotta have it games. And before we get out of here, Tommy, I'll tell you which one of these games is a gut check Saturday, which you don't always see before mid-September, but it's coming for one of these squads.
All ready for week 3. What about you,
Yeah,
DK?
I'm fired up, man. I was diving deep in the tape and the numbers. I'm ready to go. Searching to get over that big – there's going to be one of these weeks, and I feel like we're both due, where we're going to get hot, we're going to hammer them, we're going to come in here next week, and we're going to feel great about ourselves. The more information you have, the better our picks are going to get.
Yeah, you guys were a little closer to 500 here in week 2, but again, the college football season, I will say, is different than the NFL because there's a lot more unknown in the college games, especially when you have some of those FCS teams or a smaller group of 5 teams. But yes, a chance to get on the right track and have these picks here. And we start with a pretty good one with Georgia and Tennessee, where you have Georgia 4.5-point favorites here against Tennessee with a total at 49.5. Now, I don't need to tell you what this rivalry's been like, especially from a Tennessee perspective, and we have the trends here to back it up as well. Every time there's been a chance to have a Vols win over the Dogs, it has not worked well. And then at home against the number, since 2000, 7-22 against the number. That's right up there with Colorado and Duke. Now, more specifically, Danny, Tennessee's last win against Georgia came in 2016. That was a Joshua Dobbs Hail Mary to Juwan Jennings here. This version of Vols and Dogs, what do you like most? The total in this game?
No, I do. I do like the total. I like Georgia. I feel like there's been a massive overreaction to both of these teams. You know, Tennessee, it feels like, oh, Joey Aguilar steps in. They don't miss Nico at all. I'll remind people, last year, Nico early in the season was lighting up the country and looked like a Heisman frontrunner, and then he came back to reality once he got to the SEC schedule. I think you could see some of the same. And then on the flip side, Georgia, people are like, what's wrong with Georgia? Their offense isn't going yet. Gunnar Stockton is still a young starter. I'm not going to touch it. I would lean towards laying the points with Georgia, but I think this is one of those slow starting games. I mentioned Joey Aguilar. This is his first opportunity against a defense like this. I still think Georgia has one of the better defenses out there. And I mentioned Gunnar Stockton's struggles. I think on the road in the SEC, Tennessee's defense looks like they're not missing that much from last year. Give me the good old-fashioned first half under in the first half. I think lower scoring affair, a little bit worried about big plays late from any Josh Heupel team, but early, I think Georgia's defense dominates, so I'll tackle that first half under.
Which is 24.5.
Over that key number.
At FanDuel. What about you, Chip? You have a little bit of a stronger take on the side here.
I do. I know they are the Georgia Bulldogs, but I'm going to call them the Georgia Possums because they've just been playing possum. I can count on one hand the number of competitive downfield throws beyond 10-plus yards that we have seen from Gunnar Stockton. I mean, granted, he dumps it off to somebody like a Colby Young or a Zachariah Branch. You can still hit explosive plays because you've got great athletes on the side. But I'm with Danny. I just don't think Georgia has been showing any cards because you've got this massive game against Tennessee, a week off, then you play Alabama. For the Georgia Bulldogs, that is 2 of your 4 biggest games of an entire season that you're having right out the gate. No wonder they were playing possum with Marshall and Austin Peay. But I am also looking at the Tennessee side of things because Tennessee is looking like they are going to be down 2 cornerbacks in this game, and some of those injury issues have me a little bit concerned. I will go ahead. I will lay these points with Georgia. I think we finally see the offense take a step forward, and the defense, which again, I know it's Marshall and Austin Peay, but they're starting to look a little bit more like that 2022-2023 vintage of the Georgia defense, especially at the linebacker position.
So to piggyback off of that point, and I don't know if we have that opening graphic again of that 7 for 22 against the number, because it's actually against AP top 10 teams. So there was a bit of a caveat there because they've also been really good at home. 21-1 at home since the start of 2022. The only loss, though, Danny, was to Georgia in 2023. So you've been a part of rivalries and trends where you've dominated, when Tennessee's in a position, and again, it's not like these are the same teams, but you keep losing in big games to Georgia. What's that like?
It becomes a mental hurdle, and I think this is Josh Heupel's biggest challenge, is kind of taking some of the mystique and the intimidation that Georgia brings. But there's only one way to do that. You actually have to go out there and actually win the games. I remember Hendon Hooker a few years ago. Tennessee was one of the hotter teams in the country. They go to Athens. I know it's a different place, but they got completely humbled. So it almost feels like, as well, Kirby Smart has seen this Josh Heupel offense. He's got a pretty good game for it, because typically they're pretty high flying. They're a big play machine. When they play against Georgia, that comes screeching to a halt. So that is something I think mentally and schematically, Heupel's got to try to figure out this formula, which a lot of people in the country are trying to figure out how to overcome that hurdle and get past Georgia.
I remember that Hendon Hooker game, SEC on CBS, Saturday afternoon, all that hype coming around these two teams. Georgia came out in a nice way. All right, let's get to Texas A&M and Notre Dame, where the Fighting Irish are laying just under a touchdown. This one will be a night game on Saturday. Chip, I'm going to give you first word. There's a lot of people saying Notre Dame needs this win, especially after that loss to Miami, because they're not going to have very many opportunities down the road. How are you entering this particular game with the Fighting Irish?
I'll tell you what, it is so interesting that in the college football season, we go so hard on those opening weeks that you almost forget about Notre Dame, right? I mean, they play on that Sunday night against Miami, and I come back, I'm like, oh, they're 0-1. And what do we know about them? Not as much as we know about Texas A&M. So from a handicapping, from a picks perspective, I've got to start with Texas A&M, Tommy, and I've got to start with a defense that does not look anywhere close to what I was expecting from a Mike Elko coach defense. I don't think they are as good getting after the passer, but the thing that really alarms me about this matchup is Texas A&M's defense has not been great against the run. UTSA, Utah State have both been able to move the football very effectively against these Aggies group, and when you are Notre Dame trying to put together the pieces of a little bit of a gut-wrenching, kicking the you-know-what kind of loss to the Hurricanes, you're thinking about what can we do to get back to our bread and butter. To me, that's feeding Jeremiah Love. That's running Jadarian Price. That's even continuing to build on what was a successful game for C.J. Carr in terms of running the football with the quarterback run. I think Notre Dame's going to be able to move this football against Texas A&M. And on the other side, ooh, boy, Marcel Reed likes his new toys. Mario Craver comes over from Mississippi State. Little 5'9" boy who can scoot. He's going out there hitting explosive plays. KC Concepcion from NC State, another gadget player who's hit a bunch of explosive plays. You look at the average yardage per touchdown, Texas A&M is hitting big plays left and right. So it's a little bit of a contrarian play if you only think about what happened last season. Guys, I'm going to go over the total of 49 and a hook here. I think both these teams are going to be able to move the football.
So Chip going with the points, and this is also a rematch of last year's home-and-home Mike Elko's debut, in which Notre Dame won 23-13.
That game was gross, too. It was really ugly. I mean, the offense was horrible.
Is it going to be as gross this year?
No, I actually kind of lean with Chip. I think Notre Dame's offense is going to be able to get going at home. And you mentioned something off the top. I think this is Notre Dame's Super Bowl. They realize that there is zero margin for error, because with their schedule, which is lighter than most teams out there, without having a conference championship game to sort of have that get out of jail free card, if you don't impress with your resume, they have to win this game. Other things to note, they're coming off a bye week, and I know Texas A&M hasn't exactly faced a gauntlet, but I've talked to other coaches who already have guys showing up on injury reports. They're like, man, I would love to get a bye in here pretty soon. They got theirs. I think they've been stewing over this Miami loss. I think they played well enough to win. Chip mentioned something too. C.J. Carr, I thought looked most comfortable of any of the first-year starters. Some of them had bigger names and maybe more stars, behind their resumes. But I thought C.J. Carr looked really, really comfortable. I think he continues to improve, and I think Jeremiah Love gets going. Marcus Freeman's 3-0 against the SEC straight up. I don't think he's intimidated by them. He's a great defensive mind. Very, very curious to see how Marcel Reed does against this Notre Dame defense. But I'll go ahead and lay the points in this sort of backs against the wall early for Notre Dame.
Got to get some love for Jeremiah Love. Some people were even questioning, was he healthy in that Miami game, because of how underutilized a lot of people certainly thought that game at Hard Rock Stadium was going to go. Last game in this block is Indiana State, Sycamores, at number 22, Indiana. Again, an FCS game, so as we were taping midweek, not necessarily a line that we can give out, but we can anticipate score predictions again. Danny, you have one for us here in this one?
Yeah, I went with 49-7 for the Hoosiers. Smoke him if you got him. Fernando Mendoza got it going last week. Had a really nice game. He's getting more comfortable in that system. Elijah Surratt, their receiver, they're starting to develop a nice continuity. And we've seen them, we've talked a lot about this team early in the first 2 weeks. They don't have, very tough opponents. They're finally starting to get things together. So I think this is one of those sort of, you're getting ready for the stretch you're about to go through. All these cupcakes are getting there. I think this is their last sort of tune-up. I think it's a pretty comfortable win for the Hoosiers.
DK go 49-7, Chip 52-3.
Yeah, I mean, Larry Bird shudders at what his poor Sycamores are going to have to deal with right here. An Indiana team that left so many points on the field in week 1. You saw them come back with a vengeance in week 2. I expect we will see more of the same in week 3. The Hoosiers, by playing a little bit subpar early on, it only means worse blowouts for the teams that are going to follow.
Indiana 7-0 all-time against Indiana State on the football field. So again, Friday night for this particular game. Time to hit a break here on HQ Spotlight, but when we come back, Clemson are road favorites at Georgia Tech in the early Saturday window. One of the guys good laying to 3.5 in Atlanta. Welcome back to the show. Let's talk about 4th-ranked Oregon, which came into last week's game against Oklahoma State. 4 touchdown favorites against the Cowboys, and they covered. Now they're 4 touchdown favorites on the road against Northwestern. And Chip, this Ducks team has been able to score the football, right now seeking their 3rd 50-burger if they can get it done this weekend. What are we thinking about this line, and what do you think about that Ducks offense?
Stack them up, ladder them up, let's go. First quarter, first half, full game. 3rd quarter, 4th quarter, don't care. Oregon gets it done. Ducks don't care who it is. It is a nameless, faceless opponent. I'm going to take for my best bet here Oregon in the first half. Dan Lanning does let his team know when it's time to throttle off, when it's time to maybe not go as hard in terms of the aggressiveness. That big number, of course, coming on the backs of not just 1, but 2 interceptions returned for a touchdown. The Ducks didn't even score a point in the 4th quarter. They had 69 before the end of 45 minutes of football. So I think in this spot, it's going to be about making a statement early. They've played in some early games before and not really been too affected in terms of being able to get the offense going. So I think what they're looking to do is put Northwestern behind at such a deficit that there's just no way the Wildcats are going to come back. Maybe let off the gas, but ultimately what I said at the beginning, I stand by. I don't care which way you take the Ducks here. They are just a war machine, and I plan to keep following them covering spreads for a long time.
Chip, did you see what happened, Tommy? I don't know if you saw this, but Northwestern's social media, they put out a tweet that was like, come watch our new beautiful stadium. And I hope Dan Lanning didn't see that, because you don't give him any ammunition. Like, you better not say anything. And people were like, please don't show this to him, because he'll take any little thing and use it to fuel that fire for his team. But he's also been incredible against unranked opponents. He's 27-0 with an average score of 44.8 to 17.4. What does that come out to? 27.4, which is right around the number. But I'm on to something that Chip said. I think this team is still angry and irritated about the way they've been completely forgotten about. They were perfect last season of the regular season, and yet no one gives them any credit because they got blown out in that Rose Bowl. I think Dan Lanning has manufactured a chip on the shoulder of one of the more talented teams, rosters in the entire country. Dante Moore continues to get more comfortable. I know he hasn't faced great competition yet, but I think I would put this in that category. I think Northwestern's going to be outmanned, so I'll just go ahead and lay the number. It's under that 28 at 27.5. I'll go ahead and lay him with the Ducks.
Yeah, I was laying out that Moore-to-Moore connection with Dante Moore to Corian Moore. It was plenty early and often at Autzen Stadium, and Jenny Dell was certainly busy in that game. Let's go to Clemson, 12th ranked in the country, laying north of the field goal here, so we'll see if the hook matters for our guys. 3.5 against Georgia Tech. Dan, I'm going to give you first word, because during the break, we're like Haynes King, by the way, reportedly full practice on Tuesday. So, again, you were questioning him and his health ready for this game here. That being said, you've got another first half under in this game?
I do, man. This is my favorite play, especially in some of these big games, and especially the way Clemson has kind of come out of the gate. Now, they started slow against Troy last week. They looked awful, and it was like, what's wrong with Cade Klubnik? Well, he did finish 10 of 11 and finally started getting things going, and he's played very well in Atlanta against Georgia Tech. Last time I was out, he had 4 touchdown passes. But I think this is one of those ones, another coach who does a great job motivating, and Brent Key there at Georgia Tech. He was jovial earlier in the week. They showed him yesterday. He's ticked off, and maybe it's because he's not certain of his quarterback status. And I don't know if it's Haynes King or Aaron Philo, but I think Clemson's defense has actually been one of the sides that's delivered on their promises. They did buckle down in the second half, pitched a shutout there. I think this is one of those games where you have a home crowd advantage, a team super fired up, and I'm going to count on Clemson starting a little bit slower. So I'll take Georgia Tech in that first half number.
27.5. By the way, 90th meeting between these two schools. I'm learning from research there was like this whole thing about using $2 bills stamped with the Clemson logo, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
Chip, in terms of... You do?
Yeah, it's a real thing. They give them out at big games.
Yeah, they said the tradition of using the $2 bills stamped with the Clemson logo when the Tigers play the Yellow Jackets in Atlanta all the way back to 1977. Back to this year's edition, though. Chip, you're willing to lay the 3.5 in this one.
Yeah, there's an old ACC adage that's really has been throughout this Dabo Swinney championship era, which is there's a, we're still Clemson. There's an expletive before that, blank you, we're still Clemson. And it's when you think that, oh man, they're down. Oh, they're not at the top of their game. There's no Deshaun Watson. There's still Trevor Lawrence. And then they say, we're still Clemson. We still have more talent than you. We still are at the top of this conference. We are the class. We are the pace car that everybody else tries to catch up to. I think there'll be some orange in Atlanta, Danny, spending those $2 bills at the varsity and all around town. I think that Clemson goes into this game as an opportunity to be able to make a statement, to really show the rest of the conference that they are the class of the ACC. I think that this Georgia Tech defense does not have the Jimmies and the Joes to expose the weaknesses that we saw on display against LSU. So I've got Clemson. I'll lay the number. I think they win by 7 to 10 points.
Okay. Take the number there, 3.5. Not scared of the hook is one Chip Patterson. Number 13, Oklahoma. North of 3 touchdown favorites at Temple. This game will be at the link where the Eagles play here, as OU thrashed Temple 51-3 last season. With that being said, Danny, you think that Temple is going to come out with some fight in them early on?
Well, and I'm curious to see how Oklahoma shows up in a noon game in Philadelphia. I don't think the atmosphere is going to be quite as electric as it was in Norman at night last week. And this is sort of your classic kind of hangover games type spot for Temple. And for Oklahoma. For Temple, on the other hand, this is sort of their big opportunity to go against one of the top teams in the country. And Evan Simon, their quarterback, quietly has had a really strong season. 77% completion percentage, 9 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. I don't know if he's actually going to light up Brent Venables in that Oklahoma defense. I think it might be a little bit more of a struggle for him. But I think early sluggish start for Oklahoma leads to a Temple cover in that first half. I wish it was over that 2 touchdowns, but I'll take it at 13.5.
Chip, you like the total in this game?
Evan Simon's #1 in the country in passer rating. Like this. So the reason we got to go under the hood here is a little bit of a refresher course, because K.C. Keeler is the new Temple head coach, and K.C. Keeler has been terrific as an underdog. Danny, I like your play here as well. Now, even though his Sam Houston teams in their first year of FBS play weren't really an offensive juggernaut, we have seen him at times, when he has had the right personnel, be able to showcase at the FCS level some very dynamic offensive teams. Now, what Temple has done, granted against much, much lesser competition, has really been to flex their muscles in this new offense, and I could see them being able to hit enough points here. Oklahoma slowly warming up and pouring it on late, that my best bet is to tackle the total and go over the 51.5. Now, look, you mentioned 51-3 last year. That gets us over this total. But how about Evan Simon, Temple's quarterback, who said he watched last year's game from the sideline and it was burning him up. He ended up replacing the starting quarterback a couple weeks later and being the starter for the team the rest of the season. Look for Simon to give us 10 to 14 points, and then the Sooners go the rest of the way to take us over.
We continue the noon slate with ranked teams in college football. Let's go to Wisconsin, nearly 3 touchdown underdogs against Alabama. Guys, the Badgers haven't been this big of an underdog since 1996 at Ohio State when they were 26.5, catching that number here. That being said, 20.5 to 21.5. You guys are both taking Bama laying this number against the Badgers. DK, I'll have you go first.
Anybody notice what Bama did last week against Louisiana Monroe?
ULM?
Ty Simpson, ULM. Ty Simpson was perfect. He was 18 of 18 on the game. The quarterbacks as a group had 7 touchdowns and 0 interceptions. That was without Ryan Williams. We just got the news earlier today. He's going to be back for this team. I think the loss to Florida State has been so over-exaggerated. I think it's more about Florida State being a much better team than it is about Kalen DeBoer and there's a disastrous culture. I still think they're a really good roster that is figuring things out, and that is bad news for Luke Fickell. I think their confidence is back, their swagger is back, and also I worry about Luke Fickell because Wisconsin has struggled in both of their games so far. I think it's a long uphill battle. I think Alabama, with another opportunity against a Power 4 opponent out of conference, I think they're going to come out with a big statement win.
Chip?
Yeah, I think I found a little bit of a market inefficiency here in terms of someone who looks at Wisconsin's final score against Middle Tennessee and says, oh, they took care of business. No. That second half was lipstick on a pig, because in the first half, they were not great passing the football. They were not very effective. They were making some mistakes, interception right before halftime. And I'm just telling you that if you make those same mistakes against Alabama, it ain't going to be like Middle Tennessee where you're able to take a narrow lead into halftime. You're going to be down big. So they poured on those scores late to make it look okay in terms of if you were just flipping through the scores, but to go back and review that, this Wisconsin team really has not recovered from losing Billy Edwards in the season opener. I just don't think they're going to score enough points to cover this spread.
Let's end with Central Michigan and Michigan from Ann Arbor, and then Saturday afternoon. You guys are actually on opposite sides, but a chance to both cash your bets. Chip, I'm going to go with you, a team total here to start this off.
Well, first of all, we've got to take Biff Poggi into consideration, right?
Yeah.
We've got to request that he's going sleeveless as he is the interim head coach, as Sharon Moore serves the first of a 2-game suspension. But I'm going to go with the offensive side of the football. I'm going Michigan team total over. Obviously, I just need us to get to 35 here. Central Michigan provides, Tommy, as you know, sort of an interesting stylistic battle in terms of the way that they've switched to almost an option Army-inspired offense with their new head coaching hire. But for Bryce Underwood and an offense that was totally bottled up by Oklahoma, man, it's going to feel good to be playing at home, not in Norman, and to be going up against a MAC defense, not an Oklahoma defense that might be one of the better defenses in the entire country. I think that with the idea in mind of continuing to build the confidence in our freshman quarterback, I think we leave him in there, we keep our foot on the gas, and we try to score touchdowns for the home fans.
I just want to know the prop. Is there a prop on what Biff Poggi's going to wear? Like, is he really going to rock that, like, dry fit, cut off sleeves, cut at the,
that'd be great,
cut at the neck that just looks kind of gross? He's not exactly made for TV with that body in that shirt. I think Michigan gets the win, but I'm going to back the Chippewas here. Chip mentioned something about the new offense they're running, Army style. I think that could present some issues. Most teams, you have maybe a week to prepare, and it's a little bit easier. This one, you think about the amount of energy and time that was spent on the Oklahoma game because they really wanted to win that one as a non-conference. Also a noon start. It's coming back. I just wonder where Michigan is mentally. I do think they want to get Justice Haynes involved in that game. On the flip side, I think Central Michigan wants to slow this game down. So I'll take the Chippewas to cover the big number.
All right, we saw that offense. I did. The Spartans in their win over San Jose State did lose to Pitt, again, 1-1 coming to this game with Michigan. All right, we're going to hit a break here on HQ Spotlight, but when we come back, Texas Tech entering this week the highest AP rank since Cliff Kingsbury was running the show in Lubbock. Let's target Auburn here in South Alabama. The line is 24.5 to 25.5 right now, with a total at 54 and a hook. Chip, I'm going to give you first word. You're grabbing these points. I need to know why.
Because they got bigger fish to fry, Tommy. Are you kidding me? Well, number one, let me pay some respects to South Alabama. This Jaguars team, in an absolute dogfight with Tulane last week, ended up coming up just a little bit short. But still, I see the quality of a group that even though they lost their quarterback to North Carolina, and even though they lost their running back, Fluff Bothwell, they still have an offense that can go out there and put up some points. And Auburn, oh yeah, they've got to be on the road at Oklahoma. While I think that Hugh Freeze has done a good job of being able to take in the transfers and level up the talent for a year where there is a lot of pressure on him to deliver results. The only thing Hugh Freeze has to deliver is a win by any margin. That means some of my favorite words, too many daggum points. Give me the Jags plus the 24.5.
So I have had a lot of fun, as we all have, at Hugh Freeze's expense this offseason. I mean, saying who's going to call the plays. They had 3 different play callers reportedly. Is he scripting practices to build up Jackson Arnold's confidence? Well, guess what? I might have been wrong. I think the vibes are high there at Auburn. I'm watching pregame speeches where he's talking about people. The fans are parking 5 miles away just so they can walk to the stadium. The team has responded to it. They have this new pregame swag surf. The players are, all amped up. And if you want to boost your quarterback's confidence up, what better way to do it than to pad those stats in an opportunity like this? I hear what you're saying about a schedule that's going to get a lot tougher, but I think Hugh Freeze still needs to show those boosters and all those critics that this team is for real. I say lamb with the Auburn Tigers, War Eagle.
A schedule that's going to get tougher, bigger fish to fry. How about the next 4 games? At Oklahoma, at Texas A&M, home against Georgia, home against Mizzou.
Gotta pad those stats while you can.
Tough gauntlet there for Auburn. Followed up that win against Baylor, by the way. Good win against Ball State. All right, Villanova and Penn State. Chip, I don't know if you were with me with Emily Proud. She made the mention of Penn State in 2025 kind of doing the Michigan 2023 non-con thing where they're kind of just 40-point favorites here, not really playing anybody. Worked out pretty well for that Wolverines team, though, DK.
Yes, it did. But I do wonder, there's been a trend, and we saw it last week, with a lot of the top teams in the country against lesser competition, putting up 70 burgers, and except for Oregon, who we saw put up 69 against a Power 4 opponent. But I think this is the opportunity for Penn State, final tune-up, to go out there and say, you know what, everybody else is having a ton of fun. Why can't we? I think this is a big sideways number. I had them at 69-3 against Villanova. Drew Aller was a little bit sloppy, some missed opportunities. They've got to get that passing game going, get him more comfortable. I think it's a perfect opportunity to do it. I think it's a big win for the Nittany Lions.
Yep, I'm going to go load management, Tommy. That's what I think it is. Ryan Day told us at Big Ten Media Days that they huddled more. They were literally trying to limit snaps all through the regular season in preparation for what they thought could be a deep playoff run, which obviously paid off in being ready to go for win after win after win after win on the way to claiming the national championship. So when I'm looking at these kind of games, I'm just going to keep putting 0s and 3s in terms of the opponent's score because you just ain't scoring on this defense. Offensively, I think it could be a little limited, which in this particular case is just 49. So I'm going to go 49-0 here. They
had Nevada, they had Florida International, and now Villanova do the Nittany Lions in James Franklin.
Oregon's coming up, though, Tommy. We'll get that coming down. Then we'll find out what Penn State's all about.
No doubt. Oregon State, we saw what they were all about. Speaking of the Ducks, catching 23.5 at Texas Tech this time around. You guys are both bullish on the Red Raiders. Chip, I'm going to give you first word on what the market you like to target here.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Texas Tech team total over 41.5 was where I saw this. This is a good opportunity to cash in on what I think is the weakest part of either one of these teams. That would be the Oregon State defense. Just an incredibly leaky group that for a team that I thought was going to be able to maybe lean on its defense while Malik Murphy tries to put stuff together. As they were in that back and forth with Fresno State, they just could not get the stops that they needed against the Bulldogs. So I'm looking at Oregon State's defense just not having enough answers. It doesn't matter whether it's Baron Morton, whether it's Will Hammond. This Red Raiders team is going to be able to score here. So with a big spread like this, I'm going to go with where I'm most confident, and that's Texas Tech's offense going up against Oregon State's defense.
I like it, but I think Texas Tech scores at will, as you mentioned. But I also think their defense is continuing to get better. They had hit the portal. I mean, of course, we've talked a lot about the portal class, which is one of the top ones in the country, where they went, though, and got guys like David Bailey from Stanford to come in there. That was one of Joey McGuire's question marks coming in, was a secondary with a lot of new pieces in it. But I still think they're getting better and better. I think this is a lopsided win for the Red Raiders, so I'll lay the points.
Chip, thanks for the correction. I know Fresno State was catching 3.5 in the win outright there with E.J. Warner and Matt Entz there against the Beavers. All right, let's get to Iowa State, nearly 3 touchdown favorites at Arkansas State. So, Danny, what's the handicap for this one for you?
So, Iowa State has been a team that has 3 wins. Not many teams in the country have 3, but they haven't exactly been the prettiest of wins. I have a tremendous amount of respect for Matt Campbell. I just don't know if this is the type of team that's built to go out there and blow teams out. And who cares? Because you're getting those wins and you're getting the respect you deserve. I think they moved to 4-0, but I think this is too many points for me. So I'll take the underdog here with the points.
Steer into the skid, Danny. You know, everyone says the Cover 3 podcast can't stand Iowa State. We disrespect Iowa State. It would be so disrespectful to have not just one of us, but 2 of us come out. Oh, no, I did it too. Danny, I'm also going against Iowa State. Okay, I'm going to just take the first half here. But Arkansas State playing at home, you just got stuffed in a locker by Arkansas last week. Jalen Raynor is the key name here because if he's able to have success against Iowa State's defense, then he could start to make them sweat just a little bit, get the fans fired up. Over the course of 4 quarters, I think that Rocco Becht and the rest of this Iowa State team are going to be able to get settled. But in a hostile environment, in a strange spot on the road, I'll take Arkansas State and Jalen Raynor to get off to a strong start after a very disappointing result against the Razorbacks last week.
Let's hit a break. When we come back, can South Florida do it again? Win against another ranked opponent. This time it's number 5, Miami, and number 18, South Florida. Has there been a bigger surprise to the first 3 to 4 weeks of the college football season than South Florida? Open up the season Thursday night in Tampa at Raymond James Stadium against Boise State as 4.5-point underdogs. They win by nearly 4 touchdowns. Then at Florida, 18.5 is what the number closed. Even our sports app had Florida winning that game, but USF came back to win in a big way, and now they're ranked 18th in the country. Next up for South Florida, number 5, Miami. This is another big spread right around the same time, 17.5. First, before we get to the pick there, DK, what has surprised you and stood out to you the most about this Bulls team?
I would love to say nothing. Like coming into the season, I thought they were one of these dark horse teams to make the group of 5 spot from the playoffs. Byron Brown is a difference maker at quarterback. He loves getting the big plays. He's mobile enough to go out there and make those plays with his legs as well. And he was out last year, and he's healthy for the first time in a while. And this is a team that has done really well against the Power 4 competition. Think back to a couple years ago when Alabama was in there and found themselves in a dogfight. Now, Alabama won that game, but in talking to Alex Golesh, he says they've been close, and he feels like this team is different because at times he would look at his team in the huddle and he'd be like, yeah, they just a little bit of doubt would creep in the later portion of games. And I think some of the play calling going for a 58-yard field goal at one point in that game showed they're not here just to show up. They're here to try to win these games. And so far, nobody in the country has 2 wins as good as South Florida. There's some teams that have 1, but beating Boise State the way they did and beating Florida, it is one of the best resumes in the country.
Chip, let me give you the Miami perspective, that win over Notre Dame, then Bethune-Cookman here. So what's the 2 games Carson Beck, Mario Cristobal experience been like for you?
Carson Beck's checked every box. You know, I feel like I see him being able to operate within the flow of this offense. He does a good job of isolating the matchup advantages. Clearly, Malachi Toney's a big part of that, having an electric game breaker there on the outside, and the athleticism of a player like C.J. Daniels, who had that highlight reel catch against Notre Dame. But it's the lines of scrimmage. It's everything that you would sign up for when you hired Mario Cristobal. It's what he made his bread and butter on. His Oregon teams, which were competing for conference titles, were also excellent along both lines of scrimmage. They've hit on some transfer portal additions. And so, yeah, there are some extra pieces against the best teams in the country where you're going to be seeing if Miami can answer the call, including a challenge for the man on the sideline with the headset. But in terms of being able to be one of the best teams in the country along the offensive line and the defensive line, Miami looks every bit the part.
So you guys are sounding like you guys are on opposite ends. One's taking South Florida, one's laying it with Miami. Danny, the way you open it up, very bullish on the Bulls.
I am bullish on the Bulls, but I'm not going to go that far and say they pull it off 3 weeks in a row. because I think the best thing that happened to Mario Cristobal was what happened in Gainesville. All he has to do is show on that tape to his players if there was any temptation to overlook the Bulls, it is gone out the door. And I am becoming a believer in this Miami team. I was doing some research for the game and saw that last week that South Florida only pressured DJ Lagway 3 times. And a young quarterback who's been a little bit disappointing as far as the expectations, which were sky high for DJ Lagway. You're going up against an offensive line which might be able to do the same thing, give Carson Beck a very clean pocket. And Carson Beck has looked very comfortable in Shannon Dawson's offense with some of those weapons that Chip just mentioned. So I think Miami gets the win, but I still think people aren't exactly aware of just how good this South Florida defense is. I think they're physical. And offensively, I think Byron Brown makes enough plays to keep it inside the number. I think Miami wins by 2 touchdowns, but I think South Florida covers.
Thinks the Bulls covers, and Chip, you're on the other side.
11:57, 11:58, 11:59, midnight Cinderella. You got to pack this thing up and turn it into a pumpkin. I think that USF, that has so many big picture, great story items that are still on the table no matter what this score is. But for Miami, this is where you've got a team that is coming off an incredible high in their second straight road environment, and it's time for you to really flex your muscles and get tuned up, because as Danny knows very well, one of the biggest games of the entire season is not that far away, coming up on the first Saturday in October, October 4th, with a trip to Tallahassee. This is where Miami has to get into its highest gear, because the biggest games of the season are coming up soon. I think they have no mercy. I think they absolutely squeeze the life out of this USF offense, which is capitalized on big plays. And I think that when it comes to Carson Beck going up against a USF defense that I think has played way above its head, and I say that complimentary with looking at Todd Orlando, the defensive coordinator, looking at the players that are out there making the plays, I just don't think that they've got the Jimmies and the Joes to be able to hang with Miami from a skill perspective. So I will take the U, and I will lay the 17 and a hook.
It's 41.5 for Texas and UTEP. Longhorns beat San Jose State. They didn't cover the number. The under, by the way, Chip Patterson called the San Jose State team total under 7.5. And the Spartans scored 7. And it was, boy, that was a tough watch there for Coach Ken's team. But both of you guys are on Texas with this big number. Danny, I'm interested why.
I think did you see Sark's interview when he's asked about Arch Manning's shoulder and whether he was grimacing? Is he in pain? I think that was much ado about nothing, but that's the type of scrutiny you come under when you've got Arch Manning as your quarterback. But I also, even though I did think he looked a little uncomfortable earlier in that game, they had a span where they scored 4 touchdowns in 5 minutes. The explosive nature of that offense is still there. And I think this is another young quarterback who Sark wants to build up his confidence. I think it was a little bit shaken after what happened on the road there at Ohio State. I think this is one where you gain it back before they have to go. They have another cupcake after this, but they do have that game in Gainesville looming a few weeks away. So I think this is a big blowout for Texas.
Yeah, I mean, Texas should cover this spread. If not, there's warning signs. And why is Sark going to say, I don't take pictures of you while you're going to the bathroom? Where did he get that? How did we make the connection between throwing the football? And you know what? Never mind. Yeah, Longhorns lay it. Let's get on to the next game.
And the next game is number 25, Missouri, nearly 4 touchdown favorites against Louisiana. Chip, you're going to lay that 27.5.
Very impressed with Missouri. I really have been. I think Bo Pribula has settled in. Eli Drinkwitz has helped orchestrate an offense that's allowing him to highlight his abilities in terms of being a dual threat playmaker. And Louisiana, I understand that it is a smaller corner of college football, but I thought that they could be a team just like they were last year that could compete for a conference title. A couple of results that are a little alarming. Maybe the number has not caught up to how good Missouri is, and maybe how much of a downgrade there should be for the Ragin' Cajuns. So especially at 27 and a hook, that's where I'll take Missouri.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think Bo Pribula is really starting to shine in that offense. Shouldn't be surprising. Eli Drinkwitz is a great offensive mind, but I was a little bit concerned about the defense, what we saw against Kansas. Now, I don't know if Jalen Daniels is walking through that door for Louisiana, but I still would like to see things shored up a little bit. I lean your way, Chip, but I'm going to go ahead and tackle the total and say Missouri handles their business offensively, puts up a lot of big numbers, and I think Louisiana scores enough to put it over the total.
That's a look at games kicking off at 4, 4:15, and 4:30, respectively. Hitting a break here on this show, we'll talk about Ole Miss, which won against Kentucky but didn't cover the last-second kick there for the Wildcats. They're laying 7.5 against Arkansas this time around. Welcome back to the show. Before we get to Arkansas and Ole Miss, a shout out to Lane Kiffin, who understands what we're talking about, because his team was favored 8.5 to 10.5 against Kentucky. What, a kick with less than 10 seconds left makes it a one-score game. And he said after the game, I'm sorry for everyone who put out a wager. Also, he said, why are you wagering on this stuff in the first place in terms of the total? But shout out to Lane Kiffin, who understands what we're doing here. That being said, Ole Miss 7.5 here against Arkansas. And Chip, you're going to be grabbing the points with the Razorbacks this week.
Yeah, and let me put Ole Miss on upset alert here. I think Arkansas has the offensive firepower to go in and win this football game. Now, I'm not taking that as my best bet because defensively they might have some liabilities that could be a problem, but they definitely have enough to make this a back and forth. They definitely have enough to make anything at 7.5, 8.5, 9, about where it opened. All that's green light go for me. I think the Ole Miss defense has regressed after losing a lot of players to the NFL, and I'm looking at Austin Simmons in that game against Kentucky. Had to get both ankles taped during the first quarter. Some of the throws were just a little bit off. I think there is credit for Kentucky, yes, but also maybe a little bit of concern for where Ole Miss's new quarterback is, where this offense is in the development. I think it's high scoring. I think it's a back and forth. And again, I like Arkansas to be able to have a shot to win. So it's 7 and a hook. It's woo pig suey for me.
I like the way you're thinking because I think it does correlate with mine. I'm going to tackle the total and say it goes over. Now, you would ask me this a few weeks ago. I would have said, man, maybe I'm a little bit worried about Arkansas's side to put up the points, and I wasn't concerned about Ole Miss, but you do bring up something. Austin Simmons, who I was very bullish on, without seeing him play very much, he has struggled. He's looked like that first-year starter. Couple of off interceptions last week against Kentucky, some ill-advised throws. He has worked his mobility, but you mentioned him getting taped up. A little bit concerned there. And on the other side, Taylon Green, he was compared to Lamar Jackson this week. He's got 10 touchdowns on the season, one of the tops in the country. And boy, it looks like Bobby Petrino's in his bag. So I think this one is a little bit more of a shootout, back and forth game. I don't hate your side, Chip, but I'm going to go ahead and look at these points put up on the board, a little bit back and forth matchup.
So Danny taking the over. You guys are both on the under of Ohio at Ohio State. Rare night game for the Buckeyes. Been playing all these noon games the last year and a half, and they finally have something in Columbus. They do have an off week following this game, Danny, so the under of 51.5.
Yeah, I think this is one where this is a tremendous amount of respect for Ohio State's defense. Matt Patricia has done wonders for this defense. Some of the schemes he's doing, I don't even know if he has to show too much in this game, but there was a lot of question marks about some of the pieces that left for the NFL last year. Well, guess what? New 4- and 5-stars have stepped right in, and they haven't missed a beat. Julian Sand did look more comfortable, but I still think that was more a result of grambling. I think Ohio is a little bit better opponent for them, but I worry about Ohio's ability to put up any points on the board. I think it's a comfortable win for the Buckeyes, but I still think it's under that 51.5.
Yeah, right there with you. We are both on the under, and we are both looking at Ohio State. Let me jump in real quick and say a quick shout out to Sonny Styles, and just an incredible player from the linebacker position. Great closing speed, one of the few experienced pieces. You know, him, Caleb Downs. The joy of watching Ohio State right now. I know you've got a Jeremiah Smith. I know you've got a Carnell Tate, but this defense is just flying around and making plays all over the place. So, yeah, under for me, and it is because Ohio State's defense, I think, is one of the best in the country.
Both of you guys on the under with a spread of 31.5. Let's get to number 9, Illinois, hosting Western Michigan. They're basically 4-touchdown favorites, and it's interesting because I think I brought this up more than once. The variance on this Fighting Illini team is incredible because they're a top 10 team, but there are a couple of handicappers in this business that don't even have the power ranking of the Fighting Illini, even in the top 25. Chip, what are you thinking about Illinois and the big number that they have this week?
I mean, I'm not going to expose any state secrets here, but I think our own Tom Fornelli, who went to Illinois, doesn't have them power rated at the same place as they are in the AP Top 25 rankings. But guess what? They're not playing other teams in the AP Top 25 rankings today. They're playing Western Michigan. And what they showed against Duke is a team that, while they didn't have their best stuff, they were able to be solid enough and not beat themselves to eventually run away with things. And I think that it might be something similar. They'll be looking to get the ground game going because Caden Fagan just never really got into a rhythm. And I think that the Western Michigan defense will allow them to get the kind of yards and points we need. At 27 and a hook, I'm going to take Illinois and I'll lay them.
Yeah, I like the under in this one. I'm going to tackle the total because of what you said. I mean, I think you trust Luke Altmaier out there. It looks like he's found a favorite target in Hank Beatty. But the lack of the run game last week, I think, is something that Brett Bielema is going to want to prioritize, and Barry Lundy, the offensive coordinator, as well, when you can sort of develop some of that continuity on the offensive line. And that defense forcing 4 turnovers, outright. There was 5 turnovers in the game, 4 of them on defense, and there was a muffed punt as well for the Duke Blue Devils. I think that defense completely stifles this Western Michigan attack. So I'll go ahead and take the under 50.5 in this one. I think it could be a 35-3, 42-7 type game where Illinois is in complete control, but a little bit lower scoring.
They were in control in the second half. It was a 1-point game against Duke, and then they outscored the Blue Devils 31-6 to end up winning quite comfortably on the road. LSU's got a night game taking on Florida. You know what that means in terms of the betting trends. We'll see if that continues with DK and Chip on the other side. Home stretch here on HQ Spotlight with Chip and DK. Florida LSU is the first one we'll talk about. Tigers, the third-ranked team in the country, north of a touchdown at 7.5 with a total at 48.5. So we talked a little bit about Florida by virtue of that USF game, Danny. The first half under of 24.5, that 24.5, especially if you can get it, is something you certainly like in this game.
I do, because I still think, Florida's trying to find their offensive identity with DJ Lagway, who did struggle some. I think that's an aspect that Billy Napier's has to try to, instill some in him. And the best way to do that is to get that ground game going. And Billy Napier did say he's going to, keep calling the plays for the Gators, which I know some Gator fans are maybe hoping for a change there. But I think a lot has been made about the demise of the Gators. I mean, remember what happened last year? They started off very slow, and then they finished strong. And I think this is more about maybe South Florida being a really, really tough opponent than people gave them credit for, and that loss not being just as horrific as people made it out to be. And this does feel like one of those salvageable games that can salvage your season. That being said, Florida's defense is the one I trust the most here to make life a little bit more difficult for Garrett Nussmeier and company. And that LSU offense, yes, I know it was a little bit better last week, but against Clemson, they did not exactly light it up either. I think they'll be more comfortable. I lean towards LSU to win and cover this game, but I think earlier, a little bit more of a defensive slugfest between the two teams. Slower start gives me the first half under.
Chip, Gators at 7.5. Is that a lean like or a love for you?
That's a like. That's a like. It's more than a lean. I'm sad we don't have Jacqueline here so you can get my Gator chopping. But look, I mean, I think that LSU maybe has some places where Florida can make them sweat. Number one, we've got the LSU offensive line dealing with some injuries. I know that we don't at this time have total status about Braylon Moore and about their center, but that offensive line, a little bit overwhelmed against Clemson. You're like, okay, that's Clemson. But then Louisiana Tech started pushing you around. Uh-oh, that's not great. That's not going to allow Garrett Nussmeier to be able to really reach his full potential with this offense. And then I think about Florida and the fact that if they can get Caleb Banks back at the defensive tackle, that would be a way that they can be able to start some trouble. And also just, Billy backed into a corner. I mean, this is the true gut check Saturday. Can you get up off the mat? Can you throw a haymaker against one of your rivals? Because I do think that the reason that Florida had this high ranking in the AP Top 25 poll is because on paper, they are talented. And they are talented enough to be able to go and make this a game. So as LSU left a lot to be desired in its Week 2 win against Louisiana Tech, yeah, I'll take 7 and a hook with the Gators to go in because it falls back into a very, very scientific part of Chipalytics, which is, wouldn't it be hilarious? And what would be more hilarious than for Florida, after that loss to South Florida, to then go into Tiger Stadium at night and turn this into a game? So, yeah, I'll take Gators plus 7 and a hook.
That would be something. But, Danny, if it wasn't, if LSU ends up winning by double digits or even more and looking good, because this was a team after their win against Clemson, got a handful of first-place votes. I think you were very bullish on this LSU team. So they get a bit of a La Tech malaise thing. But if they're looking good once again, where would they be in your sort of top national ranking, national title contender conversation?
I mean, I think clearly they're already there for me. I think they're already there for most people. But if they would beat this Florida team, I think it would actually probably mean more for me than a lot of people. I think some people might say, well, the Florida Gators aren't that good. I still think Florida's roster is pretty physical, especially along the offensive and defensive lines. And I think it would be just another sort of feather in the cap for LSU's resume, where it's for everybody. In the SEC, the schedule is about to get that much tougher, where you get one leg up against an opponent that a lot of people thought was going to be a really, really tough out for LSU. So I think it would put them in the driver's seat in the SEC, where they might already be, but I think it would put them in the driver's seat if they get this big win.
Tommy, I'll build on top of that and say that if they look great offensively in this game, win handily, now I start to feel more confident about LSU as a top 5 team in the country because, again, in week 1, we said, oh, that's Clemson's defense. But now you look at 2 games of data. Defensively, LSU looks the part of their ranking. Offensively, they don't. They've got Garrett Nussmeier, but in terms of a down-to-down, drive-to-drive, they are not a very efficient group right now. If they can correct those issues and have the offensive excellence match what has been defensive excellence in year 2 of Blake Baker as defensive coordinator, now I'll start to feel a little bit better about it.
Garrett Nussmeier, potentially Sussmeier there? Well, who knows? First 2 games, we'll wait and see. Vanderbilt and South Carolina, Gamecocks laying 4.5 for the 11th ranked team in the country. Our producer, who's the South Carolina guy, Dan,
he sounded nervous, didn't he?
A little apprehensive about that,
nervous.
right? So the points, both you and Chip taking
I think
the points.
he should be. I think producer James should be a little bit nervous about this one. And I think South Carolina has been a little bit shaky early on. They did, against Virginia Tech, they had a lot of points late in that game. The punt return to kind of make it look a little bit more deceiving, the final score. This, to me, is more about Vanderbilt. I mean, how can you not be a big believer in Diego Pavia and the confidence he brings to that team? I think the biggest compliment you can pay to a quarterback is no matter what the score is, and you look up at the scoreboard, his teammates feel like they always have a chance to win. And I don't know what those teammates were thinking when they were down at halftime, 20-10 in Blacksburg, in one of the toughest places to play. But they believed in it and outscored them 34-0 there for the remainder of the game for a statement win. Clark Lee thinks they can be one of the best teams in the country. I think that might be a little bit lofty, but that team believes it. I think they believe they can pull off this win in Columbia. I think the Gamecocks should be on upset alert. I'll go ahead and take the doors with those 4.5.
Chip?
Yeah, Diego Pavia has really added the downfield pass to his game. Sometimes last year it was a little bit more of a, expanded, elaborate option-based offense, but now he has really started to open things up, become a little bit more versatile, and he's going to need that against a South Carolina defense that I think has done a very, very good job of replacing some of the talent that they lost to the NFL. But I'm concerned about this South Carolina offense because Lenora Sellers has not looked great in the pass game. Lenora Sellers has been the best part of their run game. They rip a few explosive runs with the running backs, but the traditional run game just isn't working right now. And this Vanderbilt defense comes for war. It is a white-collar university with a football team that has a blue-collar mindset. The way that they will whip up on you in the trenches is something that I think is a real advantage. So Vanderbilt, I would say that they're the upright. They could do this outright upset. I just know it's going to be close because they are that kind of team that always expects to win.
Utah at Wyoming. The Utes are laying 23.5, and a trip to Laramie is never going to be easy, no matter where you are, even if you're old Mountain West foes there. Danny,
or if it's going to be windy in Laramie, it could be tough to play too. I'm going to go ahead and back Wyoming here in this spot. And I think Utah is a great story. I think Devin Dampier has been really good at quarterback for them. But I also think Wyoming has been much better this season. They were really bad this year. They're off to a 2-0 start, in large part because of their defense has really stepped up here. So I think a lower scoring game, but I think ultimately Utah gets out with the win. It's not a disservice or anything to what I think Kyle Whittingham can do. I think it's a tough spot for them to play on the road. So I'll go ahead and back those Wyoming team with the points.
Chip also on the under here.
It's gonna
There it is.
be in Laramie.
You're gonna no, it's all right. It's actually just like 5 to 10 mile an hour ripping through War Memorial Stadium and 10 miles an hour in Laramie. Well, that's just like a light gust anywhere else in the country. Danny's spot on here. I think the Wyoming's defense has done a good job of taking a step forward, and I do think that Utah going on the road in this type of environment, you're going to lean on the ground game. You're going to make sure you don't make mistakes, and so yeah, I also I like the under in this spot.
That's going to be on CBS Sports Network, and then Utah does have Texas Tech the next week at home. They are the betting favorites right now. Utah is ever so slight in terms of the Big 12. Where are you guys at in terms of the conference outlook?
After the first week, what I saw Utah do to UCLA, I called a mulligan because I was big on Kansas State. Could not have been more wrong about that, as Kansas State has gotten off to an atrocious start. And I'm putting Utah. I thought Utah coming to the Big 12, they could possibly be that program that filled the void that Oklahoma and Texas left behind when they went to the SEC as sort of a team that's perennially at the top of the conference. Last year was a little bit dicey. They had quarterback issues, but now they look like they've solved them. With Dan Pierre, Kyle Whittingham's defense always travels. I do think they're the favorite to win the Big 12. They're my mulligan pick this year.
Tommy, I think this team could be 12-0 on Conference Championship Saturday. Texas Tech, their toughest opponent, they're going to get at home with the muss right there in Salt Lake City. And you look at the rest of these games, I just don't see a single one of these teams being able to take down Utah. The bottom of the Big 12 is even worse than I expected. And the contenders at the top have all seemed to start with a step back off the pace. Utah, on the other hand, has exceeded my expectations as Jason Beck and Devin Dampier have come in and just hit the ground running. So I think that Utah, yes, is my pick to win the Big 12, but to take it even further, I think they could enter conference championship Saturday as a top 5, top 6 team in the country.
4-1 for the Utes, plus 480 for Texas Tech in that futures market for the Big 12. Chip, Danny, another solid show. Weekly picks here involving every team in the AP Top 25. They also do their locks picks on Thursday on the Cover 3 with Bud Elliott and Tom Fornelli. Scan the QR code. Check them out. Also, the shows on YouTube.